The night everything snapped. I still remember the way the spoon slipped from my hand and clattered into the sink the moment my mother said it. Her voice was sharp, like she was slicing me open with every syllable. "You're too selfish to understand sacrifice." For a second, I honestly thought I misheard her. I had just gotten home from a 10-hour shift, still wearing my badge and the smell of hospital sanitizer clinging to my scrubs. My feet throbbed. My back ached. And the grocery bags, the ones I bought with my own money because she liked the good yogurt, were still hanging from my wrist. But she said it again, slower, clearer, like she wanted it to sting. "Selfish people never see it in themselves, Mia. That's the worst part." I froze. The kitchen felt too small, too warm. The overhead bulb flickered as though it wanted to disappear from the conversation entirely. My hands were trembling, but I kept my face straight. Because that's what I'd learned to do in this house stay quiet, stay useful. Don't react. The irony was brutal. I had just come from paying the hospital's billing office. Again. The bill was for her. Again. 6 years of covering her treatments, her medications, her specialist appointments. 6 years of rearranging my life around her needs, shifts, meals, finances, everything. 6 years of hearing her talk about how my older brother, Daniel, was the real adult of the family, even though he hadn't paid for so much as a bag of cotton balls in his life. And still, that night, I was selfish. "Mom," I said slowly, carefully, "what did I do that was selfish?" She rolled her eyes like I was a child asking why the sky was blue. "You wouldn't understand. Some people just don't have a giving heart." I stared at her. Was she serious? I had missed vacations, skipped dinners out with friends, canceled dates, turned down promotions, all so I could keep up with her medical costs and daily care. A giving heart? Mine was practically bleeding out. But she wasn't done. "Look at your brother," she continued. "Daniel would drop everything if I needed him. But you just think about your career, your money, your life. You don't know sacrifice the way real family does." My chest tightened. Not anger at first, but something closer to disbelief. Daniel? Her golden son? The one living 3 states away, posting gym selfies and motivational quotes while I carried the weight of her entire reality? He hadn't visited in months. He hadn't called in weeks. But somehow he was the one who knew sacrifice. I leaned against the counter because my legs felt suddenly weak. "Mom, I need you to tell me what exactly you think I'm not sacrificing." She sighed dramatically, as if my question was exhausting. "Mia, everything I've ever done has been for you kids," she said. "All I'm saying is that you've never done the same for me. Not really." And that right, there was the moment something inside me cracked. 6 years. 6 years of giving, swallowing my pride, pushing myself to the edge. 6 years of draining my bank account and my energy just to hear that I had never sacrificed. I had never felt so invisible. "What about the bills?" I finally asked, voice steady in a way that surprised even me. She blinked. "What bills?" "The medical bills," I said. "Your treatments, your medications, the ER visits. Mom, who do you think has been paying for all of that?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Insurance pays for it." "No," I corrected softly. "Insurance covers part of it. I cover the rest." She stared at me like I had spoken in another language, as if the concept didn't even make sense. "You're lying." "I'm not." But she shook her head, offended. "Daniel told me insurance handled everything. He would never let you take on something like that alone." I almost laughed, because the alternative was crying. Daniel didn't even know the name of her medication. He thought deductible was a type of flower. "Mom," I whispered, "Daniel hasn't paid anything." "I have." She fell silent, not because she understood, but because she didn't believe me. "Mia," she said firmly, "you always exaggerate. This is exactly what I mean when I say you're selfish. Everything turns into you wanting credit." I felt something hotter than anger rise in my chest. a kind of grief, a realization that maybe, no matter what I did, she would never see me. Her phone buzzed, and when she saw Daniel's name flashing on the screen, her face softened into the kind of smile she used to reserve for me when I was little. "I'll talk to you later," she said, brushing past me. "Try to think less about yourself for once." And she walked away, just like that, leaving me in the kitchen with the buzzing fluorescent light, the grocery bag still hanging from my wrist, and a truth I could no longer ignore. Nothing I did would ever be enough. And something had to change. The things they never see. For 2 days after that argument, the house felt like a museum of everything I'd kept silent about for years. Every room echoed with invisible work I had done for my mother, work she didn't remember, didn't value, didn't even believe. But the truth was this: sacrifice becomes invisible when people get too used to taking from you. On the third morning, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. I sat at the kitchen table before work, staring at the stack of hospital envelopes I kept hidden in a drawer so my mother wouldn't panic. They were all addressed to me because, legally, they were mine. That's right. The billing office had stopped sending them to her after she kept forgetting to open them. She'd missed deadlines, lost papers, ignored calls. So they put everything under my name. They knew I would handle it. I always did. I slid open the drawer and pulled the newest one out. Authorization required, past due, a phrase that haunted my sleep. I handled her bills the way other people handled prayer, quietly, privately, believing it mattered even if nobody saw. When I tried to explain it to people, friends, co-workers, they looked at me like I was performing some moral miracle. But to me, it was simple. She was my mother, and she was sick, and someone had to step up. That someone had never been Daniel. Not once. The phone call that hurt more than it should have. That afternoon at work during my break, my phone buzzed with a message from my brother, Daniel. "Hey, Mom said you're starting drama. Everything okay?" I stared at the screen, feeling something inside my chest twist so hard it hurt. Starting drama. That was what she told him? That was the story? I typed, deleted, typed again. Me. We talked about her medical bills. She didn't know I've been paying them. His reply came instantly. "Daniel, why would you say that? You know she gets emotional. There's no need to guilt trip her." Guilt trip her? Was that what he thought I was doing? I pressed my palm against my forehead, feeling a headache forming like a storm. Me. I wasn't guilt tripping. I just told her the truth. He sent a laughing emoji. "Daniel, come on, Mia. You're making it dramatic. Insurance covers everything." My breath caught. He didn't even know. He truly didn't know. Me. "It doesn't. It hasn't. I've been paying the out-of-pocket costs for 6 years. You've never contributed." There was a pause. Then, "Daniel." 6 years? Daniel. "Why didn't Mom tell me?" Because she didn't know? Because she didn't ask? Because she didn't care enough to notice? I didn't bother explaining. He wouldn't understand. He never had to choose between paying rent or paying someone else's medical bills. He never had to skip lunch because of hospital payments. He never had to put his own life into a slow, painful pause. He never had to sacrifice. Not really. His last message popped up. "Daniel, look, I'll talk to her, but don't make her stress. You know how sensitive she is." I almost laughed. Sensitive? Sure. If she was so sensitive, why did her words slice through me like knives that night? The day I saw myself clearly. That evening, after my shift, I sat in my car for a long time, maybe 30 minutes, maybe an hour. The parking lot slowly emptied. The sky shifted from peach to violet, and I stayed there, hands motionless on the wheel, because something inside me had shifted in a way I couldn't undo. For years, I had told myself I was doing what a good daughter does, what a loving woman does. Take care of your mother. Take on the burdens. Carry the weight without letting it crush you. But sitting in that car, exhausted and small in the dim light, I realized something I had never admitted, even to myself. I had become her parent, not her child, and she still saw me as the selfish one. I closed my eyes, letting the silence swallow me. I didn't want gratitude. I didn't need praise. I wasn't asking for a parade. I just wanted acknowledgement, just once. A single moment where she would see me, the real me, not the version in her head who was always disappointing her. But it wasn't coming, not from her. And if I wanted peace, if I wanted a life where I could breathe, I would have to create it myself. Not for her, not for Daniel, but for me. The breaking point people always miss. The breaking point didn't come in a dramatic explosion. It didn't come during an argument or a hospital scare or one of those moments where everything suddenly collapses. It came on an ordinary Tuesday, the kind of day so painfully normal that no one would understand why it mattered. The day I realized I wasn't living, only surviving. I had taken the afternoon off work to take Mom to her cardiology appointment. I picked her up, like always, and she got into the passenger seat with a sigh like she was doing me a favor. "Don't drive too fast," she snapped immediately. "You always rush everywhere." I didn't say anything. I didn't tell her I'd driven across town in my lunch break to get her favorite soup because she'd been too tired to cook. I didn't tell her I'd been up until 2 a.m. finishing work I missed because of her last appointment. I just drove. At the clinic, she checked in, then began a conversation with another older woman in the waiting room. They talked casually, weather, recipes, aches and pains. Then the woman said, "You're lucky your daughter brings you. Mine lives 3 states away." I forced a polite smile. Mom didn't smile back. Instead, she gave the woman a pitying look and said loudly, "Well, you know how kids are these days. They don't really sacrifice anymore. Not like we did. My daughter means well, but she's self-focused." Self-focused. She said it like she was describing a character flaw, not the person who kept her alive. The woman turned to me with awkward sympathy, and I felt heat rising in my chest so fast I almost couldn't breathe. I excused myself and walked to the bathroom, locked the door, leaned over the sink, and cried. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. Exhausted tears that felt like they'd been sitting behind my eyes for years. There's a specific kind of pain that comes from being blamed by the very person you are saving. It's the kind that digs into your bones. It's the kind that whispers, no matter what you do, it will never be enough. For the first time in years, I let myself feel it, all of it. When I returned to the waiting room, Mom looked annoyed. "Where were you? I needed help with the paperwork." Of course she did. The call that finally snapped. Something inside me. When I dropped her back home, she barely looked at me. "You should work on your attitude," she said casually. "You've been sensitive lately." Sensitive. The same word Daniel used. The same word people use when they don't feel like acknowledging they've hurt you. I didn't respond. I just drove away. Halfway home, my phone buzzed. It was my mom again. Maybe she forgot something. Maybe she needed help. I answered. But the voice I heard wasn't weak or scared or grateful. She was furious. "Mia, I found another hospital letter. Why am I getting these? I thought insurance covered everything. What are you hiding from me now?" I pulled the car to the side of the road and closed my eyes. "I'm not hiding anything," I said softly. "I've been paying the parts insurance doesn't cover. For years." "Well, I didn't ask you to," she snapped. "But you needed me to," I whispered. There was silence. The kind that tells you the other person isn't listening, just waiting to continue their original argument. Then she said something I will never forget. "You're selfish, Mia. You're always acting like you're some kind of hero." I wasn't acting. I wasn't even trying to be a hero. I was just trying to keep her alive. She kept talking, but I heard nothing after the word selfish. Something broke quietly inside me, like a thread snapping after being pulled too tight for too long. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just said, "Okay, Mom, I hear you." And I hung up. The moment peace, finally became a priority. That night, I sat on my bed with all her medical bills spread around me. Pages and pages of proof. Proof of nights I stayed up crying because I didn't know how I'd pay rent after paying her hospital fees. Proof of the raises I never asked for because I was too afraid to lose my job's insurance. Proof of the life I postponed. Her life, not mine. I stared at the bills until my eyes blurred, and then I whispered to myself, quietly, shakily, but honestly, I can't do this anymore. Not like this. Not alone. Not while being blamed for what I was sacrificing. For the first time in 6 years, I allowed myself to imagine a different life, one where I wasn't defined by what I fixed, paid for, or protected. A life where I mattered too, and that thought terrified me more than anything. But it also felt like breathing again. When the truth finally demands to be heard. I didn't plan to confront them. I wasn't seeking revenge or pity or dramatic scenes. All I wanted was one thing I had never gotten from either of them. Acknowledgement. Not money, not help, not gratitude. Just acknowledgement that I wasn't the villain in their story. But life has a way of dragging buried truths into the light at the exact moment you least expect it. And that moment came 2 weeks later. The storm before the conversation. Mom had another follow-up appointment, and I decided I wouldn't go alone this time. I called Daniel the night before. "Can you come?" I asked. "Just this once?" He hesitated because Daniel always hesitated when responsibility came knocking. I guess. But you don't need me there. You've been handling this forever. That's the problem, I said quietly. I've been handling everything alone. He sighed like I was inconveniencing him, but he eventually agreed. When I picked them both up the next morning, the air in the car was thick with a silence that felt dangerous. Like the three of us were walking across a frozen lake, listening for cracks. Mom sat in the back seat with her arms crossed, radiating disapproval. Daniel sat up front, scrolling through his phone like none of this mattered. But it did, more than they knew. The Doctor Who said what I never could. Inside the exam room, the doctor greeted us and started reviewing Mom's chart. But then he paused. He turned to Mom with gentle seriousness and said, "Before we begin, I need to thank your daughter." Mom blinked. "Thank her? For what?" "For being incredibly consistent with your payment plans," he said. "Most family caregivers your age struggle with the financial burden. You're lucky she's so responsible." The look on my mother's face was indescribable. Shock, confusion, annoyance, all tangled into one expression. Daniel looked at me sharply. "Payment plans?" he whispered. The doctor nodded. "She's been handling all your out-of-pocket expenses. 6 years straight, never missed a payment." Mom turned slowly toward me. "You... what? Why would you do that?" The doctor didn't realize he had detonated a bomb. He just continued flipping pages. "It's very rare," he said warmly. "You have a daughter who truly sacrifices for you." Sacrifice. The exact word Mom once claimed I didn't understand. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I forced myself to stay steady. Mom didn't say anything else in the exam room. Neither did Daniel, the parking lot where everything broke open. As soon as we walked outside, Mom turned to me. "You should have told me." Her voice was small, something I wasn't used to hearing. "I tried," I said softly. "Many times. You didn't want to hear it." She shook her head, confused, overwhelmed, grasping for a version of reality where she wasn't wrong. "No. I didn't know. I didn't think. I thought insurance did everything," I finished. "It never did." Daniel stepped forward, eyes sharp with guilt. "And you've been paying? Alone? All this time?" "Yes." "But why didn't you ask for help?" he said quietly. I almost laughed. "Because you never offered." He flinched. Mom pressed a hand to her forehead. Her voice cracked. "I called you selfish," she whispered. "I said you didn't understand sacrifice." I wiped at my eyes. "I know. And you still paid everything?" "I didn't do it for your approval," I said. "I did it because I love you, even when it hurts." Daniel looked away ashamed, for once in his life. Mom stepped closer, tears finally pooling in her eyes. "I didn't know how much I leaned on you," she said. "I didn't know it was crushing you." "It wasn't just the bills," I said. "It was being blamed for things I was fixing. It was being judged while breaking myself to keep you alive," she whispered. "I didn't see you." That sentence felt like a fist slowly unclenching around my heart. "No," I whispered back. "You didn't." The words I needed to say for years. Then I said the thing I had been afraid to say for most of my adult life. I need help, not just financially. I need you both to see me, to treat me like someone whose life matters too. Mom covered her mouth as she cried. Daniel swallowed hard. For once, neither of them minimized my feelings. Neither of them laughed. Neither of them called me dramatic or sensitive. They just listened. Really listened. And that felt like the beginning of something new, a version of our family where my heart wasn't the only one bleeding quietly. The day everything finally came. Full circle. Mom always used to say that families don't change, only circumstances do. But I learned something different. People change when the truth becomes too loud to ignore. The truth about my sacrifices had finally reached them. But the journey wasn't over. Not even close. The quiet shift that almost felt unreal. The week after that appointment, things felt different. Daniel called me 3 times in 1 week. That alone was suspicious enough to make me check the weather for flying pigs. But he didn't call to ask for favors, money, or help. He called to check on me. "Need anything? How's work? You sure you're sleeping enough?" It was awkward, clumsy, almost unnatural, but sincere. Or as sincere as a brother who's rediscovering empathy can be. Mom, on the other hand, began leaving me small notes around the house. "Dinner's on me tonight. Please don't pay this month's bill. I handled it. You deserve rest today." These were not grand gestures, not dramatic apologies, just small signs of a woman trying to undo years of emotional carelessness. And honestly, they meant everything. The confrontation I feared, and finally faced one. Sunday, I decided we needed a deeper conversation, one that went beyond tears in a parking lot and whispered apologies. We sat at the kitchen table, me, Mom, and Daniel. The same table where Dad once complained about expenses, where Mom had snapped at me, where Daniel bragged about buying new sneakers while I sold mine on Facebook Marketplace to cover a copay. But this time, it was different. "I need to say something," I began gently. They both looked at me with full attention, something I wasn't used to. "I forgive you," I said. Mom exhaled shakily. Daniel blinked hard. "But forgiving you doesn't erase the years I spent hurting alone. I'm learning to stop carrying everything by myself, and I need both of you to meet me halfway." It was quiet for a moment. Then Mom reached across the table and took my hand, hesitant, like she wasn't sure she had the right. "You carried more than any child ever should," she whispered, "and I let you. I'm sorry, sweetheart." Her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel nodded. He looked genuinely ashamed. "I didn't know," he admitted. "That's not an excuse. I could have seen it, if I bothered to look." Mom wiped her tears. "I don't want you to carry us anymore. Let us carry you too." For the first time in my life, I let myself believe she meant it. A letter that changed everything. A month later, Mom knocked on my bedroom door with an envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Just read it," she said softly. Inside was a handwritten letter in Mom's looping cursive. "You taught me what sacrifice really means. You taught me what love looks like when it's quiet but strong. I hope someday I can be even half the woman you've already become. I am proud of you, always." At the bottom was a small note. "Please let me make it up to you, not with money, but with understanding." I cried so hard I couldn't even see the words anymore. The day I finally put myself first. With things improving at home, I finally gave myself the one thing I'd denied for 6 years: permission to live my own life again. I enrolled in a certification program I had wanted forever. I cut back my work hours. I invested in therapy. I let myself breathe. And slowly, beautifully, I watched my family shift around me. Daniel started helping with appointments. Mom began handling her own insurance forms. They both took responsibility for things I had been silently carrying for years. It wasn't perfect. Families rarely are. But it was real progress. The lesson that took me years to learn. If I had to sum up what those years taught me, it would be this: loving people doesn't mean losing yourself. Helping people doesn't mean hurting yourself. And sacrifice should never be a one-way street. I used to think that being strong meant carrying everything alone. That love meant suffering quietly. That sacrifice meant erasing myself. But now I know the truth. Strength is setting boundaries. Love is honesty. And sacrifice means nothing without respect. The final moment, the one that healed something deep inside me. One evening, Mom hugged me before I left her house. She held on longer than usual. "You saved my life," she whispered. "But now, let me give yours back to you." For the first time in years, I felt light. Not because everything was perfect, but because I no longer felt unseen. I had sacrificed quietly for so long. Now, finally, my family was learning to sacrifice for me, too.